So we're starting a new series today, and it's called Hello, My Name is Yahweh, or just Yahweh, because we're going to learn about the character of God. Today we want to start off with a question of this. What is God like? What is he like? And imagine if you were living like thousands of years ago, and you didn't know how to read, and so there's no Bible, or maybe the Bible wasn't even available, or right? So, and you just hear stories like, "Oh, I met God, and God did this in my life," and you're trying to put the puzzle pieces together and trying to figure out, I think this is what God is like. Like, well, what kind of, like, what is he like? Short-tempered? Is he, what kind of, like, just give me a description. And so sometimes people ask God, what are you like? I need to know. And we all, like, if I were to ask 100 people thousands of years ago, what is God like? They'll give you 100 different answers because it wasn't clear. Everybody had their own individual experiences, and they will come together and say, well, what was your experience? And a lot of times it would be not the same, or it would be contradictory, right? Because this isn't just true about God. This is true about people, right? Like, oh, I met this guy. It's like, oh, I met the same guy. He is so nice. Like, no, he was really mean to me. It's like, well, what was your context? And, right? So a lot of times, even in humans, it's hard to decide and figure out what the character of a person is just by picking up little pieces of the puzzle and putting it together. So the right thing to do usually is just ask the person, well, describe in your own words what you're like. And so, I don't know if you know this, but in the entire book of Genesis, God never describes himself. It's not until the second book of the Bible, the book of Exodus, that he finally describes himself. So we're going to be changing this question of what is God like to what does God say God is like? Like, let's just go straight to the source. Like, God, would you please tell us what you are like? And if you're wondering, like, oh, I wonder where in the book of Exodus God tells us what he's like, it's all found in these two verses, Exodus chapter 34, verses 6 through 7. And you're like, I don't think I've ever read that before. And well, this is why it's so important to know this. It's the most quoted verse in the Old Testament by biblical authors. Okay, I know that sounds a little weird. Okay, the Bible is written by many, many authors, over 40 authors. This verse is the one verse that's been quoted most by the authors outside of the book of Exodus. So Isaiah quotes this verse several times. Psalmists, people who write the Psalms, they quote this several times. This is the most quoted, like for us, we would say the most quoted verse in America might be John 3:16. Exodus 34, 6 through 7 is the most quoted verse in the Bible. This is why it's so important, because all the authors point back to this verse to talk about what God is like. Because it's the verse where God tells everybody what he's really like. So let me read it to you guys, and we're going to be going through this for the next few weeks. So let's take a look. The Lord, and the word Lord, if it's in all caps in your Bible, it's the word Yahweh. Okay, so he's like, Yahweh, Yahweh. He's talking about himself. God's like, Yahweh, Yahweh, the compassionate and gracious God, slow to anger, abounding in love and faithfulness, right? There's 5 things that he lists about himself. Maintaining love to thousands, and by when he says thousands, he's talking about for thousands of generations. And forgiving wickedness, rebellion, and sin. You're like, whoa, this is what God thinks he's like? This is great, because God is like so good, right? Like, who doesn't want a God that's compassionate and gracious, slow to anger? I'm so glad he's slow to anger. He's abounding in love, faithfulness, and he's going to be forgiving people for thousands of generations. This is wonderful. But then you're like, but Kotz, that says Exodus 34, 6 through 7a. Is there a B? It's like, yeah. And a lot of people like to not quote the B part because it's not as thrilling. This is B. Yet, there's a yet. Yet he does not leave the guilty unpunished. He punishes the children and their children for the sin of the parents to the 3rd and 4th generation. Am I reading that correct, Kotz? Like, wait a minute. So what you're telling me is I could be punished right now for something my dad or my grandfather or my great-grandfather has done? Or maybe look at it the other way. My son could be affected by what my dad has done in the past. Like, God could be punishing him for what he did. Wait, Kotz, please tell me this. Wait, what is this verse doing in the Bible, right? Now, there is a context to this, and that's what we're going to focus on today. Today, we're going to be focusing on the context of this verse and why and how we should interpret this part of the Bible of the 2 verses we're looking at. Starting next week, we're going to be looking at each of the 5 descriptions that God used to describe himself. So today, we're going to be focusing on this part and why this part is in the description that God gives himself. And at the end, hopefully it'll give you a lot of hope as to what kind of God we worship. So let's look at this. Exodus 34, verses 6 through 7. We're in chapter 34, which means, math, there are 33 chapters before this, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use some stick figures, okay, to illustrate to you what's been happening for the first 33 chapters of Exodus, and hopefully it'll help give us a more of appreciation for God, what Yahweh said here. So here we go. So Exodus chapters 1 through 2, a lot of people called the Israelites are enslaved in Egypt, okay, and they're crying out to God. We don't like being treated this way, right? We can't worship the way we want. We're treated less than human. We are working day and night. We're building monuments for other people. Like this whole empire is built on our backs. This doesn't seem right. And they start crying out to God, and God hears their cry. So while God hears the cry, God is like working up a little plan. Meanwhile, all the way on the other side of the desert, in a place called Mount Ararat, that's Mount Sinai, there's a guy named Moses. Now, Moses used to live in Egypt, but now he's a shepherd. He was a prince of Egypt. Now he's a shepherd because he left that life behind. And he's like in his 80s now. And one day he's herding his sheep. And then one of the sheep goes into the mountain. And then when he comes here, next slide, he finds a burning bush. He's like, oh, somebody lit this on fire. Oh, wait, it's not a regular burning bush because the fire keeps on burning. It's not consuming the bush. What's going on? And then he hears a voice. And it turns out Yahweh is going to answer the cry of the Israelites in Egypt through this man right here. And he basically tells Moses, I want you to go set my people free. Okay? So Moses and Yahweh have this back and forth. Eventually, Moses says yes. So Moses, next slide, he's like, okay, then I'm going to go. So he comes over here, and he has a back and forth with Pharaoh several times, a bunch of plagues, right? And Moses sets the people free. Okay? Now, where's he going to take them? Now, Moses has one place in mind because there's one place that he knows God is, which is Mount Sinai. So next slide. So he takes his people all the way back, and he has to go through the river and everything, right? He goes all the way, and he ends up at Mount Sinai, and he's like, Lord, I brought my people. Okay, so we're in chapters 5 through 18 right now, so we're moving through really fast. Now, he notices something different this time. What he notices this time is that there's a big cloud on top of the mountain. And he finds out, because there's like thunder and lightning, it's like, oh, so that burning bush thing I saw earlier is now up there, and that is God. He reduced his size down to the fire thing, but now he's back up there. And so he realizes, I think what God wants is not just to rescue these people, but he actually wants to have a relationship with these people. He's actually also looking for a group of people to represent him in the world. And so in that culture, in ancient Hebrew culture, that is exactly what a marriage would do. So the way that the story is written is basically Yahweh saying, I want to marry a group of people, and that's called the Israelites. You will be my bride, I will be your groom. So Yahweh's like, hey, we're going to be together from now on, so why don't you come up here and join me? And the people are like, all right, let's go. And they look up and they see thunder and lightning and clouds, and they're like, I don't know if you want to go. So they're like, what are we going to do? And Moses is like, guys, we got to go, let's go. And everyone's like, no, you go. And eventually Moses is like, fine, I'll go by myself. So, next slide. Oh, chapters 19 through 24. Yeah, he said, come on. So, next slide. So, Moses goes up the hill all the way into the cloud, and he's like, I'll be right back. Now, little did they know that it's going to be 40 plus days before he comes back. They didn't know that at the time. So, let me take a quick break right here and give you a little history or context to what a Jewish wedding is supposed to, what you could expect from a Jewish wedding. In a Jewish wedding, it usually takes a week. It's not like a one-day wedding festival. It's a week long. And, some cultures still do that. Okay, and when they have the wedding feast and wedding festival, there's usually 2 things that they have to figure out at the festival. Not before, not after, during the ceremony. These are the 2 things they have to do. They have to figure out how they're going to dwell together. Okay, so Yahweh is talking to Moses at the top of the mountain, and they're like, okay, so how is this going to work? I want to be with them, but they don't want to come up here, so what should we do? So Yahweh's like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to come and dwell with them. I'll come down the mountain and dwell with them. If they don't want to come to me, then I'll go to them. And so he's like, but I need a tent because everybody down at the mountain is living in tents. I want to live in a tent also. So Moses, I'm going to give you some very detailed instructions on how to build this thing called a tabernacle, right? And he gives him like information on what material to use, right? And he says like, a lot of people down there at camp right now, they have a bunch of like jewelry, like golden earrings and stuff. Use that, melt it, and use that to plate this box. It's going to be called the Ark of the Covenant, and put some like nice looking tree looking figures here and there. Use the metal and use this equipment that you have and build this tent for me. And then I could come live with you guys. It's like, okay, so we got the first part down. The second part, we need a marriage contract, which is also called a covenant. So they're like, okay, so what's the agreement that we're going to have before we agree to get married? So, next slide. So God gives Moses something called the 10 Commandments. This is the contract. Okay, if we're going to make this marriage work, we can agree that these are the 10 things we're going to live by, right? And the first two of those things is there's no other gods. Like if this is like a real marriage between you and me, it'll be like, you can't cheat on me, like no other person, right? And the other one is you can't create images of me. So he gets the rest of the 10 Commandments, and now Moses is like, okay, I'm going to go back down the mountain and tell everybody about the ceremony that's taking place right now. But before he heads down, Yahweh pulls over Moses and says, but before you go down there, I just want you to know I'm a little upset with your people right now. It's like, why? Well, they're not really behaving themselves at the bottom of the mountain. So the scene switches over, the camera goes down to the bottom of the hill, and this is what's happening. These people down here are like, it's been 40 days since we've seen Moses. Like, for all we know, he's dead. Like, did he take a pack of food with him? I don't think so. Like, I think he's starving. I don't know what's happening, right? And can he even breathe up there? I don't know. We've never been up there, right? So they're worried for Moses. And for as far as they know, they're like, well, God brought us out here, but all we see is thunder. Like, maybe we want a God that we could touch and we could feel and we could see. So what do? Next slide. In Exodus 32, they build themselves a golden calf, which is violating the first two commands. So like the ceremony is happening, right? The wedding ceremony is happening, and while it's happening, they're already breaking the contract of their marriage. So God is like, this is so rude. Like, wait a minute, like we haven't gone to our honeymoon yet, and you're already cheating on me. Like, how, right? Now, this is one part that a lot of people get wrong when they read this story. They are not creating for themselves a different God. It's not like, well, let's forget Yahweh and let's create our own cow god. Oh, mighty cow god. That's not what's happening here. If you read the text carefully, what you'll discover is that the cow god represents Yahweh. They wanted to create, okay, so they agreed to marry God, but during the ceremony, what they've done is they said, and we're going to take the one we're marrying and form it into the version of God that we want. Imagine that happening on your wedding day. It's like you're standing there, vows and everything, and in the middle of the ceremony, you're like, Pastor, hold on. And you turn around and you start building your own little clay model of the person you're marrying that's like standing right there, right? And it's like, I think he should have bigger muscles. Yeah, there you go. And like the groom is like, hello, like I'm right here. It's like, no, I'm marrying you, but I'm just creating the version that I want. That's what they're doing in this story. How offensive is that, right? So they were violating the marriage covenant while they were having the ceremony. This is like the worst thing. Like people would be like, I can't believe people would do that. But wait a minute, don't we do that sometimes? Like God created us in his image, and we kind of, what was the saying? We return the favor. We created God in our image. That's what's happening here. So at this point, God is telling Moses, like, before you go down there, I'm actually having second thoughts. I'm actually thinking of abandoning these people. And now Moses is like, no, I'll never let you do that. No, you're our God. We're supposed to be married. We're supposed to be traveling in the wilderness together. I'm not going to, no, you can't do that. And besides, what would you think the people around us would think? You rescue these people out of Egypt only to abandon them here? Your reputation is going to go down, right? So I think it's good for you and me and for the people down there if you didn't abandon them. God's like, okay, fine. So Moses, next slide, he goes down the hill with the 10 Commandments, with the marriage contract, and he sees this, right? And he's like, I can't believe it. You guys are so bad. You know what? We should just abandon you. Like everything that God was saying to Moses, and Moses saying, how dare you say that? He's now saying to himself when he sees what God saw. And like, I can't believe you're doing this. So, like, what's happening here? Moses basically observes this. He says, the Israelites created an image of God that fit their ideals. Like, that's not how marriage works. You can't create an ideal version of the person you're marrying on the day of the wedding. You can't you could try to alter the other person throughout the whole marriage. No, I was kidding. You can't do that. But on your wedding day, right? That's so bad. So let's go back to the animation. So Moses, not being happy with this, he throws the tablets and he destroys the golden calf. And so like, Moses is like, oh, well, there goes the marriage contract. Like, what do we do? So, okay, I cut this part out because this is a long story. I'm trying to do an abridged version. He eventually gets another pair. And he comes down the hill, next slide, and he's like, I'm just going to make my own little tent. And he pitches a tent. And then after that, the cloud that was on top of the mountain rests on that tent. So this is God's way of saying, you know what? Forget these people. It's just me and Mo. That's it. Just the two of us. Nobody else. And Moses is like, no, you can't just be with me. You have to be with us. It's like, but these people rejected me. It's like, I know they're idiots, but come on. Like, and you're like, God's like, okay, fine. I will not abandon them. Now, Moses in this tent has a thought. He's like, I'm starting to have doubts about who God is. Like, God, I'm starting to, I get this impression that, God, you're good, and that you rescued us, and you're protecting us, and you're feeding us in the desert, and all that kind of stuff, and you're really excited to be with us, but now I'm starting to think that you're not all those things because of some of the things you just did. Like, you told me that you're going to abandon these people. Like, so Moses is starting to have second thoughts, and like, God, you need to tell me, who are you? Like, really? Can you use your own words and describe to me who you are? I gave up everything. I was living a happy life with my family on this little sheep farm and everything, and then you showed up and I encountered you, and I was so convinced that you're a good God that I gave up everything to do this job. But now I'm having questions and doubts about your character. And if your character isn't what I think it is, then I might just throw in the towel too. So Moses asks God, show me your glory. Show me who you are. So God's like, that's fair. So this is what I'm going to tell you to do. I'm going to have you, because if you were to see me, you would just disintegrate because I'm so holy and I'm so big and so good. So I want you to, next morning, I want you to go to the other side of this mountain. And while you're there, I'm going to put my hand over you because you can't see me. If you see me, you're going to, right? And I'm going to walk past you and then remove my hand. And then you're going to see the traces or the back side of me. And that'll tell you everything you need to know about who I am. Moses is like, really? Okay. Now, he's like, probably that night, he's like, oh, man, I can't sleep. I get to see finally God, what he's like. So next morning, next slide. He gets out of his tent, goes to the other side. And, it's like any minute now. Next slide. And then he sees his glory. And while that's happening, God's like, I'm showing you what you need to see. And I'm also going to put words to what you just saw. And this is what he hears. Lord, Lord, or Yahweh, Yahweh, the compassionate and gracious God, slow to anger, abounding in love and faithfulness, maintaining love to thousands, and forgiving wickedness, rebellion, and sin. The 5 things he lists here are the 5 things that pertain to the context that we just talked about. God, are you gracious? Are you compassionate? Are you going to be angry with us? No, I'm slow to anger, right? So everything that he lists here are things that pertain to the plot of the story. Everything that Moses needs to know about God for him to continue on this journey into the desert, he needs to hear. It's listed right here. And a lot of us are living in a part of our lives right now where we feel like we're about to enter into a desert, or maybe we're living in the desert right now. And you need to know, God, are you going to walk with me through this? And if you are, what kind of God are you? And he gives us these 5 characteristics. It's like, wow, God is forgiving, and he'll do this for thousands of generations. That's great. And right when Moses is like, yes, I'm going to sign on the dotted line. I will continue this journey with you. God's like, I'm not done yet. Next verse. Yet he does not leave the guilty unpunished. What is he talking about here? He's talking about the Israelites who are totally dissing God at this point. God feels violated. He's like, wait, you're creating another image of me? What, right? He punishes the children and their children for the sins of the parents to the 3rd and 4th generation. So what is God trying to tell us here in these two verses? In these two verses, he's telling us this. God has two characteristics, two features that usually work well together, but in this specific situation, they're opposed to each other. So, next slide. So, there's two sides to God, okay? And they're usually one and the same. But in this situation, they're opposed to each other. What are they? Well, the first half of the verse says this, that I am a God of love. I'm compassionate. I'm generous. I will care for you. I will rescue you like you already saw me do in Egypt, right? I will forgive you like you see me forgive you several times already on this journey. We've only been traveling for a few days and I have to forgive you a bajillion times already. I am the God that will provide for you. You guys were hungry and I kept on feeding you guys without asking anything in return. I will protect you guys. I will defend you guys. I will do all these things. That is me. I am love. I'm going to take care of you. But then there's another side to God, which is I am a God of justice. If something bad happens, I have to punish it. But if something good happens, I have to bless it. Now, usually these two things work well together, but in this situation, he's like, I feel like I've been violated. Everybody here basically said, I don't want to come live with you, so I made accommodations to come down and live with you. And when I came down to live with you, you guys are acting like you're in a relationship with me, but you create another version of me and you're living with it, right? So like, here's another real interesting detail in the story if you read carefully. When God said, go down there and build a tent for me, the tabernacle, and use the golden earrings and stuff like that, right? Those are the exact same materials that they used to build the golden calf, meaning God was supposed to come down and dwell with the people in this place so he could be with everybody, but the very building materials that was supposed to be built to make that was used to create another version of him. So it's like even double offensive, right? It's like, you violated me. You have done wrong to me. And I'm fair. But because I'm fair, I have to bless good behavior, but I also have to punish bad behavior. And this is what Moses was worried about. Moses is like, well, which one are you? I mean, yeah, it's good when they work together, but when they're opposed to each other, which one wins out? But in the description that God just gave to Moses, he answers that question. Like, if you had to pick one God, which one is it going to be? Let's look at the verse again. The Lord, the compassionate and gracious God, slow to anger, abounding in love, and faithful, maintaining love to thousands of generations. And look at the next verse. He punishes their children for the sins of their parents to the third and fourth generation. He's saying there's no comparison. In the Hebrew, the word thousands is like when we say bajillion. It's like such a big number that you're like, it just means infinite. In the Hebrew idiom, third or fourth generation, you'll see like Amos use the same figure of speech. Third or fourth means as long as it needs to be. So what God is saying here is, when it comes to my character, I am both love and justice. I'm both, right? You can't take one out and just ignore the other, right? But if I have to choose a primary character for myself, he says, well, my primary character is always love. And Moses sees this and he hears this and he's like, I'm ready to continue my journey with you. Yeah, it's going to take several generations for these Israelites to eventually get used to the idea that they're married to you and they're going to be your covenant people. And yes, they just created another image of you in their own image. But you still love us. Later in the story, the people turn their backs on God, saying like, you know what, we don't want you here. And God still loves them. He doesn't give them what they deserve. Somewhere in the story of Exodus, several times actually, they start complaining so much. They're like, you know what, we wish we were back in Egypt. I think being slaves was better than being here in the middle of the desert with you. And God still loves them. Over and over and over again, we see these characteristics pop up in the book of Exodus and throughout the rest of the Bible. So, the question again is, so what is Yahweh like? Yes, he is a fair God. He is just. But he is even more love than that. But this question was a big question. Like, well, what is Yahweh like? And everybody had their own version of this answer until Yahweh actually answered the question. But even with the book of Exodus giving us very clear wording of what God is like, people still were like, no, we still think that could be interpreted in other ways. So eventually, God sent his own son. He says, you want to know what God is like? If you've seen the Son, then you know what the Father is like. Jesus, he walks the earth, and everybody gets to have like a first-person encounter with what God is actually like. And we have 4 biographies of that in the Bible: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And you know what all 4 of them say about God? That while we kept on wronging God, Jesus went to the cross and he said, I'm not going to give you what you deserve. Instead, I'm going to take it upon myself. And he died for us. If you want to know what God is like, look to the cross, because that'll tell us the full picture of what our God is like. Yes, he is a just God, but even more so, he is a God of love. Amen? Amen. All right, let's pray.